Okay, imagine this. You're at a party. We all like parties, except at this party, you walk in, you look all around the room, there is not a familiar face in the entire room. Have you all been in that kind of situation?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Not fun, not very pleasant. So you look for someone with a warm face who looks friendly that maybe would like to chat with you. And you finally see someone and you start to talk, and she says things like, oh, how long have you lived here, and what are you involved in, and what do you do? Yeah, what do you do? How do you answer that? It's a natural thing for someone you just met to ask you. What do you say if anyone asks you what you do? Any ideas? No one says, I don't do anything?
I'm retired.
I'm retired.
That
Good.
happened at the conference
Mhm.
recently. They said this woman sitting next to me, I forget what the question was, but we had to answer. So she went first, and she mentioned some things, you know, in her life, and it was very nice to meet her. You know, it's a good question. They said turn to somebody, you know, to your left or right, and
Well, yeah, it's a question you hear among people that are just meeting, and it's something to talk about, because what else do you talk about? You don't know this person yet. Well, of all the things you do, would anyone ever say, I'm a salesperson? Salesperson? You mean I'm one of these? There's nothing worse than the reputation of a salesperson. They're thought of as untruthful, and you could tell me all the things that you think about salesperson. You don't want to be one of those. But if you think about it, we're all selling something.
Mm-hmm.
What are we selling?
Ourselves.
You're selling an image. You could be selling an idea, a product. You're selling your book. So we're all selling something. So I suppose we're salespeople. Although I still wouldn't tell anyone that that's what I do. I know that you all know how to write, but do you know how to sell? If you're a salesperson. You're a horrible seller? What do you need first if you're going to sell?
Product.
You need a product, and then how do you get people to know about it?
You need a pitch.
You need a pitch, and you need publicity. You need publicity. You need people to know about what you're doing. How do you get publicity? Well, in this day and age, social media is probably what everyone would say. I'm not very good at it, maybe some of you are. But that's the fastest way to get around to the most people in the most faraway places, social media. But just locally, if you wanted to stay local, there are a number of things you could do here. There are newspapers, there are local radio stations, there are always groups. There are a lot of groups around, church groups, synagogue groups, temple groups, and they're always looking for speakers. You could always call and introduce yourself, tell what you do, and ask if anyone would like to have a speaker. Great, now you're speaking to the Elks Club. Okay, how are you going to begin that? How do you start? How do you start a presentation?
Introduce yourself.
Introduce yourself. If someone nice like you doesn't introduce like you did for me, if someone doesn't introduce you, you can start, some people will say start with a joke. I don't do that. I'm not a joke teller. If someone is a natural born joke teller, tell a joke. Otherwise, there are other ways to begin. You can start with an interesting story, something that happened. Does anyone have any remembrance of how I started today?
You asked me how I was.
Right. Now, I told you you're all at a party. I had to use your imagination. You're in a different place now. You're not here. You're at a party. You picture yourself talking, so that's how I started. I took you to a different place. It was so effective that no one remembers. But then, so you're starting. You're introducing yourself, and you're starting to talk. Some people start by saying, welcome, I'm so glad you're here today. My name is Genghis Khan, and I'm going to be talking about the sex life of caterpillars. That's what people expect, except not quite in those words. Whatever you do, if you do start that way, never look down and read and say, welcome. am so happy to see you here today. How sincere does that sound? Always know how you're going, the first words, you should know how you're going to start. Everything else, as long as you're organized and it goes along in a certain pattern, it doesn't have to be word for word the way you planned it. But you should know how you're going to start. After you welcome people, the way that I do it, I write the entire speech out, word for word, believe it or not. All these pages is what I'm going to be saying. I write it in very large print. This is 25 font, 25 size, and double space it. That way, I can put this down, and I'm not attached to it, but if I need to remember where I am, if I forgot what comes next, I just go here. And it's so easy to see, because it's very large. I can see it from down here, and it's easy to see. So it's a great practice tool. Does everyone practice if they're going to give a speech?
Yeah.
You
always,
do?
always.
Good to hear. Because a lot of people just think, oh, I'm going to wing it. I'm good at this. No, you're not. Don't wing it, because it's very easy to be taken off track. It's very easy to forget what your goal is and to start to wander somewhere else. Something reminds you of something, and then you start talking about that, and before you know it, you're off the subject. You need to have something to anchor you. So writing it all out is a great idea, and then practicing. Practice everywhere. Practice in the shower. Practice when you walk the dog. I don't even have a dog, and I practice when I walk the dog. And any place you could think of. Practice washing the dishes and practice your speech. It's a great way to become very, very familiar with what you want to say. And then, if you don't want to go bother with all these scripts, just put it on cards. Just keywords, what comes next, that's all you need to remind. You've practiced so well, so many times, you know the speech, you know what you want to say, but this will just remind you what comes next. That's what we sometimes forget, the direction that we're going. So if you just put the keywords on an index card, that works very well. Now, the way that your voice goes, no one wants to talk in a monotone. And unless you have it very well written out and scripted for yourself, you may not remember how you want to say it every time you say it. So I have a way to do that too. I'm going to give you each a little, very short article that appeared in the Wall Street Journal by one of my favorite journalists, Joe Keenan. He's a funny guy, and he writes simple, humorous, very pleasant stories. So we're going to just use this to practice the way, you're welcome, practice the way we would like to change the inflections of our, there are others under there, if we give her a wrong copy. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. So here are some pencils, red pencils. Always a red pencil, you have to be able to see what you wrote. Okay, pass these around. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome, sure. Oh, thank you. The first thing you're going to practice, or pay attention to, is where you want to pause. Every place, anything you're going to say needs pauses, and there's no one right answer, so don't worry about getting it right. It's the way you would say it, it's your personality, the way you would phrase this. So when you want to mark where you're going to pause, you take your red pencil and you put a slash mark after the word where you want to pause. After you know where you want to pause, the next thing you want to pay attention to is what words you're going to emphasize. Everything in a phrase between the places you want to pause, you're going to want something to emphasize the words in each phrase. So you underline those words that are very important, and when you read them, you know you're going to punch those out.